Kyler Murray is back. What should we expect? Justin Jefferson, questionable. What does that mean for his status in the future? Drake London, he should make his return. Are you trusting him? The Bengals wide receivers are injured. What should we do about it? All of that and coming up right now on the Injury Prone Podcast. Welcome. Bienvenidos and welcome. I am Jorge Martin. Right to my side, my compadre, el doctor Edwin Porras. ¿Cómo estamos, mi amigo?
Estamos bien, estamos listos, estamos ready. I told you this before, but a lot of the players that I work with right now, they're Dominicans, right? And so they're thinking, estamos ready. So let's go. Estamos ready.
Estamos ready. Oh yeah, the Dominicanos. Have you devolved into the puppy talk yet?
Yes, a little bit. Yep. Yeah. I've fallen into the trap, into their slang, and it's just like hard to not, when you spend so much time around these guys, right? I'm around them 5 days a week. I see the same guys 5 days a week, right? I'm treating them, I'm talking to them, doing all, whatever, hanging around them. And it's just impossible to not pick up on their slang. And so now when I call my parents who are Mexican, they'll be like, mijo, como tienes un sonido a tu acento, tienes como un acento como del Caribe. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I can't even help it anymore. It's been 2 years, man. It's crazy. It's I don't know if it's ever going to go away at this point.
It's probably not. You're probably talking faster too, because a
lot faster.
I remember one time I was on the radio on the pregame show, the Dodgers, the Spanish radio, and my mom and my sister listened to it. And it's just like, my mom's like, "Mijo, ¿qué estás hablando tan rápido?" I said, "Yeah, it's all the Dominicans, todos los dominicanos y los venezolanos." So
exactly, venezolanos too.
Yeah, sometimes, but at least we finish our sentences. The Dominicans, they sometimes things are implied, but
exactly.
Oh man, but our gente, yes, we're here to help you. Yes, so we're going to get into the injuries right now, but first off, we're going to start with Dallas Goedert, sent to the IR. Worst case scenario, what's because I mean, when we're talking about fractures, you got to let those things heal.
So it's really difficult to know where Dallas Goedert is going to be. But if we look at the data from a sample, it's a really small tight end sample, but it's a sample of NFL players. You see that in general, they miss at least 6 weeks. Right? The least amount of time that we can expect for an injury like this, assuming that he has surgery, assuming that he needs hardware, he's going to be out at least 3 weeks. So that's a 3 to 4 week absence. I would say that's probably going to be the case for Dallas Goedert. Is he's going to be out, they'll throw him on IR, and by the 5th week, he might go out there with some sort of protective sleeve on his arm or something like that. But yeah, Dallas Goedert, he is out. So you tell me, does that mean more Devontae Smith? Because I was thinking about this, and I want to ask you. So I understand the splits from last year from Devontae Smith, but this is obviously a different year. And it's not simply just a pie of so many passes now that A.J. Brown is commanding even more targets. So even with that difference of A.J. Brown commanding more targets and Dallas Goedert leaving, do you think that's still enough for Devontae Smith to be even more fantasy relevant than he has been?
I think so. I think he's going to be more consistent. I remember looking last year; it seemed like he was getting 8 targets at least every game when Dallas Goedert was out. So, I think we're still going to get AJ Brown getting 10 targets. God bless him. I've got him on so many teams that he's carrying me on quite a few. So, yeah, I think but I think there's more confidence factor in what Devonta Smith is going to do. So I'm definitely. I mean, you weren't sitting him to begin with, but I think there's more confidence factor to play him in there. So we're going to get into some guys that have already been ruled out. Some guys to kind of talk about for their return dates, and some important players that are going to be coming out. First off, Justin Fields. I mean, they played last night. Obviously we saw him in a sweatshirt with a headset, but he's a guy who seems to be honest about his injury. Where is he?
So at this point, this is about where we'd expect Justin Fields to be. I think I said yesterday before the game, there was about a 50% chance he played, 50% chance he didn't. He's still saying that he's not quite close, not quite there from a grip strength perspective, which tells us at least the pain is down, the swelling is probably down, and they're just trying to get his grip strength back. I want to emphasize that usually I'm attacking aggressively, trying to acquire guys like this. For Justin Fields this time around, I don't think I'm going to. I think he's more of a hold. And that just because there is still a chance, this was a pretty major injury, there's a chance that there's still ligament damage that isn't going to be fixed simply through grip strength, grip work, and rehab. That's still a possibility. And until I see it, I understand, like, if you see it already, if he comes back and he rushes for whatever 100 yards in the first game back, it's too late. The ship has sailed. But I still think there's enough risk there that I'm not quite. I try to be aggressive, but I'm not going to be try to be quite as aggressive on Justin Fields. I have to ask you, compadre, is there somebody sleeping around you?
My dog Dino.
That's what I thought it was. What you know? We cannot keep him awake, the injury prone podcast. That's okay. No, I just heard him. I wanted to address it. I figured it was your dog because I know that he hangs out with you. So, excuse me. So I wanted to point that out. It's okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it was. Yeah, he likes to be around his dad when he's working. So we're gonna get into that. But
this is a dog friendly podcast. It's fine.
Very much. Muchos nos encantan los perros. Matthew Stafford, obviously, he's off this week, and I have him a lot. And in one super flex league, I actually picked up Carson Wentz just in case. That tells you how desperate I am. But that injury, is that something that he could be in the clear once he's out?
I think a 3 to 4 week absence for Matthew Stafford makes sense. I think it makes sense that they didn't start him in week 9 and then now they're getting the bye week. And I don't think he's going to come back right after the bye. I think that he could still miss another week. So I don't necessarily, I'm not on the train that he'll be back unless we see him practice, obviously. But I do think that the Rams are trying to be as conservative as possible. This is again, similar to Justin Fields. This is like a round of 4 week injury, right? 3 to 4 weeks. So he is, even when they come back from their bye, he's still going to be on the border. That's probably why they brought Carson Wentz back as insurance. Expect Matthew Stafford to not return, put it in the cards for him to not return until week 12 at best. And if we're lucky, he'll come back in week 11.
Yeah, well, we're on this side of the border, so we gotta. That joke maybe someday will land better. Higgins.
Wait, I missed it. It went over my head.
I said we're on this side of the border. Mexicanos on this side of the border. North of the border.
I see what you did there now. Yeah, that did not land. Usually I'm on top of that stuff. I'm sorry. I think it's Dino. Dino's distracting me. I think that's what it is.
He really is. He's kind of like lulling you into a trance.
He's making me tired. Sorry. Continue.
Well, T. Higgins is already been ruled out. Hamstrings, obviously something that comes up. We've seen hamstrings be really bad this year. Could this be one that could be multiple weeks?
He missed time last year because of this hamstring strain. This has been an issue for him. He just can't really seem to shake it. He only missed one game. This is actually one of the games last year where he airballed. He came in, he was active, quote unquote active, and then airballed. He didn't do anything. I don't even think he played a snap. So this is scary for T. Higgins. He's had really bad luck. Him and Jalen Waddle, man, they've had really bad injury luck this year. I don't necessarily see it turning around for T. Higgins because this could creep up again. It's just something that's nagging, and he's just going to need time for it to clear up. So it's going to be something you're going to have to monitor. Conversely, I just tweeted this out, and I was reading it to you as I was tweeting it. I'm not going to pretend to be a DFS tout, and I don't know what projections, injury projections, ownership projections are going to be like in DFS. But if you're one to shy away from Jamar Chase this week, I would not, because of his back injury, I would not do it. And T. Higgins being out is another reason that I would not shy away from Jamar Chase.
Oh, I'm building a roster with Jamar Chase. I knew I was gonna get the lowdown from you on this, and when you feel confident in it, I know backs can be tricky, but you know what? Gosh, he was already getting 10 targets a game with T. Higgins there. We could be talking about 12, 15 in a game that could shoot out because CJ Stroud is going to have to throw to keep up with Joe Burrow. So, we've seen those carnival games happen with the Bengals before. So, so I think I definitely go with him. Kyren Williams, another Ram who's on a bye this week, but now trending toward coming. I know you've had a little trepidation about him in the past. Is that still something that remains?
I think it depends. If he took this time and he took the time to rehab, recover, Obviously, that's a different story, but he has a high ankle sprain. He also had another foot injury prior to the high ankle sprain that happened in 2022. And now he has this other high ankle sprain. So at least 2 of the 3 injuries are to the same side. Is it possible that he's going to continue to struggle through these injuries? I think it's possible. Ultimately, we want availability. So even though he's going to be available, we assume, but we don't know what the re-injury risk is for a guy who's had several foot and ankle injuries. But just on the surface, it's not necessarily a good thing to play through. So if I have Kyren Williams, and again, Sean McVay has said he's not coming back till week 12. So he's on the IR, and they're specifically waiting even another week for him to come back. So that tells you all you need to know about how significant the injury was. And this is after they said he was going to be fine, which is hilarious to me. So yeah, I would be careful. I'd be careful with Kyren Williams. He's a guy that I'm probably trading away. But again, when I say, for example, hold Justin Fields, I'm not saying trade away Justin Fields. I'm saying hold him. In a similar way, I'm not saying go out and trade, Kyren Williams for, I don't know, Miles Sanders, right? We saw that debacle last night. I'm not saying do that. What I am saying is, if somebody values Kyren Williams as an RB1, as what we saw in the first several weeks of the season, if somebody values him like that and then wants to give you that value in return for Kyren Williams for a safer guy, I would do that.
I'm with you on that. And right now, running back prices are just out of control. So I think you can get a good wide receiver, or maybe upgrade your quarterback, or get like a 2-for-1 type of deal. I like that idea. The last one we're going to talk about, Devon Achane. 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 People have been anticipating him. As of last week, he was still a top 10 running back, even though he only played 3 games. What is going to be his outlook coming back?
Yeah, so we need to start using that. I always pronounce these guys' names like in a Latin way, if it even looks slightly Latin, even if they're not. So we need to start doing that, compadre. So Devon Achane, he is dealing with what we assume is an MCL injury, maybe with some meniscus involvement. There are reports that he's going to be back as soon as he's eligible to after the bye. So we'll have to see and make sure that he's activated. I don't expect a lot of issues with Devon Achane. There is some sort of, re-injury risk with every major injury that guys deal with. And again, I mentioned this before. He's had 2 injuries that are in theory, we assume because he's a smaller back. Those are the 2 types of injuries that had sort of contact rolled up on injuries. Not that they don't happen to other bigger players, but he's smaller. Is he more susceptible to that? It's possible. So again, Devon Achane, I think, is a very high reward player, but I think with at least moderate risk. But he's not a guy, again, I'm holding him. I'm not trying to give him away.
Oh, I'm banking on him. I've got him held, and I just can't wait to get him into lineups that if he is anywhere close to what he was before. I mean, because he was special. I mean, what we were seeing is special, I want to see that. Plus, I think they need that. I think Raheem Mostert is kind of slowing down, so they need that extra gear that he's going to have. That and plus some friendly matchups for them in Miami, for here on out. So, definitely feeling love for him. So let's get into the main course, and he back, Kyler Murray. What are we expecting? I'm putting him in every super flex lineup that I have him, where I've been stashing him.
I think that's exactly where you should be with him. Is every super flex matchup, he needs to be in there. Here's the thing on Kyler Murray. There are a few interesting nuggets that I know have been, sort of eating at the fantasy community. What is he going to look like? What's the situation? Is he healthy? Is he not? Here's what you need to know. Kyler Murray waited as long as any NFL quarterback with an ACL in the modern era has waited to come back. So Donovan McNabb, he came back. I think his was a little different. This was obviously way back, but when he came back from his ACL, he only scored 10 fantasy points. He had 9 rush yards. Okay, fair. You look at RG3. When he came back from he came back in 8 months. He had LCL involvement, and he still scored 20 fantasy points in his first game back. Deshaun Watson only scored 11 fantasy points in his first game back. He took 10 months, but he had 40 rushing yards. Could have easily gone the other way, right? Carson Wentz, LCL involvement, came back at 9 months, 10 rush yards, 11 fantasy points. So the floor for these rushing quarterbacks is very apparent. You are always going to have that floor. That is a part of what the Konami code is. So the other thing you have to consider is that rushing is in Kyler Murray's DNA. So Kyler Murray, after he came back from a 4-week absence due to an ankle injury in 2021, he had 59 rushing yards and 31 fantasy points. So an injury that you would expect rushing to be impacted, the dude had 60 rushing yards and 31 fantasy points. You have to consider that rushing is into Kyler Murray's DNA. The other thing about Kyler Murray is that in his career, he's averaged 40 rushing yards per game. Even when you remove his 2020 season, which was an outlier, the dude still would, in 2023, would be a top 6 quarterback in rushing. That's all you need, right? If you throw another touchdown or 2 touchdowns, and there you are, right? He's already paid off, especially in Superflex. So generally speaking, I know people are nervous. I'm not saying there's no risk. I'm not saying that you don't have better options than Kyler Murray. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's a must start, but I'm saying I think the risk is being a bit overblown. And I have a decent track record when my brain says this is being overblown of being accurate. I don't want to flex, but typically that's like where I see somebody, the community overreact, I tend to correct in the other direction. I tend to have a pretty good hit rate with that stuff. So post ACL, you see quarterbacks take a 15% dip in rushing. As it stands now, and here's a little bit of speculation. This is, I admit, a speculation. But the data says that we see about a 15% dip in rushing for quarterbacks in their first year back from an ACL. The issue with that number and how it doesn't necessarily apply to Kyler Murray is that I've already mentioned, he took 10 plus months. We assume that Kyler Murray is as healthy as he's going to be. And a lot of the reason that they waited until week 10 to bring him back is because of obviously the situation in Arizona with the draft picks. And then because they wanted him to literally be as physically and mentally ready as he possibly can. So am I telling you to start Kyler Murray in every league? No, absolutely not. But I do think that there is a soft landing spot in the next couple of weeks for Kyler Murray. And I do think that, I'm going to say it, we use this a lot, but I'm going to say it, Jorge, I think he's going to be a league winner.
Ooh, and you know what? Not just with his legs, and I was just reviewing something that Matt Harmon was writing. Matt Harmon, our buen amigo, that he's getting back to that deep ball, and this offense really is going to play into the deep ball that he can throw. So we talked about his legs. He's got Marquise Hollywood Brown as one of the best deep threats. So maybe he takes some deep shots and connects at that point. So if we could get that melded with the legs. And there's going to be some carnival games. If you're playing in week 17, can you imagine having the Cardinals at Philadelphia, that Philadelphia secondary that's just been I think number 32 against wide receivers? Take that chance. Vámonos. I'm going to get my popcorn ready. I'm going to get some tacos and and just let's do it.
I'm ready.
All right, let's get into Justin Jefferson. And I actually gave somebody advice a couple nights ago where I advised them to trade Chris Olave for Justin Jefferson because of how close. Did I lead them the right way?
I think you led them the right way. I think there's some risk involved with Justin Jefferson. There's a 30% re-injury rate, but typically these guys, even the worst grade 2 hamstring strain, responds by the time you get to 6 weeks. And that's essentially, we don't expect him to play this week, but we do expect him to play next week. He's going to be close to 6 weeks at that point. Usually that's more than enough time to rehab, to rest, to get right. He's young. He's 24 years old, so he doesn't necessarily have to worry about that aspect of re-injury risk factors. So we do expect Justin Jefferson to be back. We expect him to be, the Justin Jefferson that we all know and love. And so if you're telling me that you can give up a Chris Olave, who is a good player in his own right, performing in his own right, for a Justin Jefferson who has just, a slate breaking ceiling, I'm absolutely going after Justin Jefferson. I think we're proving right. We're on the right side of history. Jorge, we both said that there's no chance that they're just going to sit him for weeks on end because Kirk Cousins, tore his Achilles or the Vikings aren't good, etc. The NFL is so random that we cannot make sweeping assumptions like that when we are literally a month behind what we actually are experiencing in the NFL. I hope that's a lesson. If you guys are new, if you guys and girls are new listeners to the podcast or new to Jorge and I's content, that's the number one thing that we try to emphasize, is that we cannot predict what is going to happen in a month. We cannot be confident, and we can't just follow blind narratives. So if you held on to Justin Jefferson, you probably did the right thing. I'm going out to get Justin Jefferson. This is a move where I will try to be aggressive. I put out some offers for him. I'm not getting him. It means my league mates are sharp. So unfortunately, I'm in too many leagues with too many sharp people.
too many people who are listening to you. That's the other part. So
Could be.
eso, yeah. JJ, get JJ, and Josh Dobbs. Maybe he gives a fresh breath, kind of fresh breath into this offense, and yeah, I mean, all of a sudden, he comes back, and now Jordan Addison becomes better, TJ Hawkinson becomes better, and JJ is going to get his 10 targets tonight. So I'm going to say, okay, we also want to talk about Drake London. It looks like he's back. He's taken off the injury report. Could we look at 100% Drake London for this week against the Cardinals?
So he probably won't be 100%, but it'll be something close to it. The re-injury rate for these isn't as high, for groin strings isn't as high as it is for hamstrings, but it's not zero, right? It's about 10% since 2018. What you see, for example, like some comps that you can have for Drake London is Deebo Samuel. This was in 2020. His first week back from missing time with the groin strain, he had 13.8 points. Corey Davis, not a great comp, but 3.5 points. Marquise Goodwin, not a great comp, but 11.8 points. Kenny Skills, 2.9 points. Deebo Samuel, again, 12.9 points. Christian Kirk, 10.9 points. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 16.6 points. T.Y. Hilton, 8 points. So that you really span the range there. There's a decent floor enough. There's like an 8 to 12 point floor with these guys that are the most comparable to Drake London. I think that's a reasonable expectation. You are muted, amigo.
Do we have anything we need to add on Jamar Chase from what you said earlier?
So, no, I think that's really it. Go get Jamar Chase. Start him in your DFS lineups. Yes, there's some risk. Yes, he could be really struggling, but we assume that they put him through their paces in practice. Again, don't go overboard, but don't be afraid to throw Jamar Chase in some lineups, because I do think that he's going to pay off, especially with T. Higgins out with the hamstring now. Yes, don't be afraid of Jamar Chase. He was talking crazy after the game about, he's alive and all this stuff. I think that's really funny. I know he's dealt with one injury that was a pretty long, lengthy history, but he reminds me of guys that athletes that I see who have never had an injury. And in the moment, I don't minimize their worry, right? Because that anxiety, that worry is real. If you've never been injured, that's a thing. But me, I live in that world, right? I'm constantly in the world of like every guy that I talk to, most guys I talk to are injured. So I see injuries. I understand what they look like in the beginning, the middle, and the end. And so it's always a little amusing to me when guys who are never injured have a relatively minor injury and they're like, I'm just glad that I'm here, man. Like, I'm just glad that I'm still breathing. So, yes, I think Jamar Chase is going to be fine. I think that they're going to probably shoot him up with something to keep him happy, right? Keep that back at bay. Now, again, the Bengals do have a track record for playing guys that aren't 100%. So, again, I want to acknowledge that is a risk. So if you're risk averse, just don't do it. But if you want to go for ceiling, I do think that he's a fine DFS play this week.
Yeah, and we already talked about that game could shoot out eventually. So, amigas and amigos, make sure you're going to the Patreon. Okay, you're going to get more information on other players, the players that we already talked about, but also you're going to get the latest on David Montgomery, Keaton Mitchell, Deebo Samuel, Nico Collins, Dallas Goedert, TJ Hawkinson, so many more. Get in the Patreon, patreon.com/injury prone. So, mi amigo, we're going to close out. We got Cultura class. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I put it out there. Who's scarier, El Cucuy or La Llorona? So anybody of Mexican descent, you know who we're talking about.
You know what we're talking about. So La Llorona's terrifying. I'm going to say, right? I'm not going to say otherwise. Do you know what always, and this is what I want to bring up with Cultura class this week that I told you I wanted to bring up. What is actually more terrifying is when you would go to the store. Maybe you experienced this, Jorge, and other people of Latin descent have experienced this. Terrible parenting, by the way. When you go to the store or you go to somewhere public and you're acting up or you're acting the fool, whatever, and your parents are trying to discipline you, you know where I'm going. You're already laughing. So in order to get you in line, your mom or your dad will look at you, typically your mom, and will say, mira, si no te aplacas, ese hombre te va a llevar. Which means if you don't start behaving, if you don't stop misbehaving, that guy over there, and she'll point to a random person, is going to take you. Terrible parenting. Horrible. But it worked. It worked like a charm, because I can't remember one time ever acting up again after my parents would do that. They didn't do it often, but when they did do it, that was more terrifying than the Cucuy and more terrifying than La Llorona. But you have a story. I want to hear your story before we get out of here.
Fourth grade. I grew up in a very heavy in Pacoima, which is basically East LA to the north, and very very Latino, probably 90% Latino. There were 4 kids. We were sitting at a table that was right next to the chalkboard, and we're sitting there talking. And one of the kids brought up La Llorona. And somebody, we were talking, and I was right next to I was sitting right next to the chalkboard. It was a square table, and pushed right up. And the kids were all facing each other, the 4 kids. And we start talking about La Llorona, and I think one of us kind of questioned whether she was real. And then all of a sudden,
Never do that.
There was the big question whether she was real. People had said there was a cemetery about 2-3 miles from from our school, and people had said that they'd seen, that they knew people who had seen her wafting through the cemetery when they were driving by at night. So, but yeah, there was the question over whether she was there was a big heavy yardstick, big heavy yardstick, and it was at the top of the chalkboard. It fell right next to me, almost hit me in the head. And I swear, that whole school year, that chalkboard never hit the ground. Never. I mean, that yardstick never hit the ground. It stayed
Except
put.
when you brought it up. Yep.
That one time, I am convinced La Llorona did it. And since then I've been afraid of her. I even have a classmate of mine from grade school who ended up working on the La Llorona movie and offered several of he did backstage work for it, production work, and he even offered us to free tickets to it. And I said, amigo,
No chance.
I adore you, but La Llorona still scares me so many years
man.
later. So yeah, so I will not question La Llorona, and yes, so yeah, she absolutely terrifies me because she took kids. So olvídate.
Man, that's brutal. That is scary. I am afraid of the Llorona, though. I do like that movie. I will say I've watched it, and it was one of my favorites. So it was a good movie.
Oh man, well, I'm gonna give you a movie that we got to break down at some point. I'm gonna go it online, and we'll do it for Cultura class. But our gente, muchas gracias for joining us. Thank you. We're gonna make sure you're getting into the Patreon. Okay. Again, one more time, patreon.com/injuryprone. Also, make sure you're getting into the YouTube. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. We're gonna keep giving you this content. We're getting close to the NFL, the fantasy football playoffs. We're gonna help you win. So hey, one more time, buena suerte. You can find me. I'm Jorge Martin 17, and he's Edwin Porras, FB Injury Doc. Buena suerte. Adios.